We're kicking the burden people out of this house. You're first. My dad didn't even raise his voice when he said it. He leaned back against the kitchen counter like he was commenting on the weather. Certain. Final. My sister laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward one. It was sharp and careless, like something cracking for fun. The only thing you're good for is your money, she added, swirling her coffee like she was bored. You don't actually belong here. For a second the room felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than my own breathing. I stared at the family photos on the wall. Birthdays I paid for, vacations I funded, furniture I bought. All smiling faces that never once thanked me. That's when it hit. Not anger. Not shock. Recognition. Hi everyone. My name is Avery Collins. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet solution to everyone else's problems. The emergency fund. The invisible backbone. The one who paid bills without asking questions because I thought love was supposed to hurt a little. I moved back into this house 2 years ago after my mom died. They said they needed help. They said family sticks together. What they meant was, Avery will cover it. The mortgage that was temporary. The renovations that were necessary. My sister's business ideas that never made a dollar but somehow burned through mine. I stood there in the same kitchen where I signed checks at midnight, where I skipped meals so their lights stayed on, where I convinced myself silence was strength. My dad crossed his arms. We're done carrying dead weight. Something inside me went very still. I looked at my sister. Then at him. And I smiled. Perfect, I said softly, feeling the words settle into place like a key sliding into a lock. Then start packing your things. They froze. Because for the first time I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. And neither of them realized it yet. But the house they were so eager to kick me out of had already chosen its owner. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. The silence stretched until my sister scoffed like I'd told a bad joke. Did you hit your head? She said. This isn't your house. My dad nodded, already reaching for his mug. Don't be dramatic, Avery. You've always been emotional. There was the old script. I walked past them without another word and went to the hallway drawer. The one nobody ever opened because it held boring things. Manuals. Old warranties. Paperwork that didn't sparkle. My hands didn't shake when I pulled out the folder. That surprised me. Behind me I could hear my sister whispering, laughing again, telling my dad I was bluffing. I laid the papers out on the dining table carefully, smoothing the edges like they deserved respect. This house, I said, still calm, was refinanced 3 years ago. You remember that, Dad? When you said your credit was temporarily complicated. He frowned. I paid off the remaining balance, I continued. In exchange, the deed was transferred into my name. Not partially. Fully. I slid the document toward them. The room changed. My sister stopped smiling first. Her eyes skimmed the page too fast, then slower, then desperate. My dad picked it up with the kind of stiffness that comes when pride and fear collide. That's not possible, he muttered. I leaned against the chair. You signed it. I was standing right there. You said, it's just paperwork. Family doesn't count pennies. He went pale. For years I thought love meant absorbing disrespect quietly. Paying without receipts. Showing up without being seen. But standing there watching their faces collapse, I realized something colder and clearer. They never thought I'd keep proof. My sister's voice cracked. You wouldn't actually do this. You're not that heartless. I almost laughed. Heartless was laughing while calling someone a burden. Heartless was counting my money as theirs. Heartless was confusing kindness for weakness. I'm not kicking you out, I said, pushing my chair back. You already did that. To me. I'm just honoring the arrangement. My dad looked up slowly, his eyes full of something new. Fear. And for the first time in my life I didn't rush to fix it. I let it sit. My dad lowered himself into the chair like gravity had doubled. Avery, he said quietly, changing his tone the way he always did when things slipped out of his control. Let's not do anything we can't undo. My sister stood frozen, then snapped out of it fast. She rushed to my side, fingers grazing my arm like we were suddenly close again. Come on, she whispered. You're overreacting. We were joking. You know how Dad talks. I looked at her hand on my sleeve. For years that touch worked. It made me soften. It made me doubt myself. Not tonight. I stepped away and the distance felt louder than shouting. You called me a burden, I said. You laughed. He swallowed. We didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that, I replied. You just didn't expect consequences. My dad pushed the papers back toward me, palms up. If this is about money, we can figure something out. You've always been reasonable. There was again. Reasonable meant give in. Family meant don't keep score. Love meant lose quietly. I already figured something out, I said. I'm done funding people who despise me. My sister's eyes filled with tears on cue. I'd seen this performance since childhood. The fragile one, the dreamer, the one who always needed saving. And I was always cast as the fixer. If this ever happened to you, say, same in the comments. A voice in my head almost joked bitterly. Because suddenly the pattern was painfully clear. I don't have anywhere to go, she said softly. I nodded once. Neither did I when you spent my emergency savings without asking. Her tears stopped. That silence told me everything. I walked toward the front door and unlocked it. The click echoed through the house like punctuation at the end of a sentence. I'll give you 30 days, I said. Legally. Humanely. My dad stared at me like I was someone else entirely. Maybe I was. Because the woman standing there wasn't asking for love anymore. She was reclaiming herself, one boundary at a time. The door stayed open behind me, cold air sliding across the floor. 30 days. To them it sounded like cruelty. To me it sounded like mercy I'd learned too late. My dad stood up slowly, adjusting his sweater like he was preparing for a meeting, not an eviction. You're really doing this, he said, not a question. After everything we did for you. I turned back, meeting his eyes. Name one thing. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. We raised you. I nodded. And I paid you back. With interest. My sister sank into the couch, staring at the walls like they might defend her. You're going to regret this, she said weakly. People don't forget betrayal. That almost made me laugh. I learned that from you, I said. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom listening to the house breathe. Footsteps. Whispered arguments. Doors opening and closing softly like guilt trying not to be noticed. For the first time, I didn't rush out to calm them. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't Venmo money to fix the tension. I just listened. In the dark, memories surfaced. My sister's tuition I paid quietly, the car I bought for the family that I was never allowed to drive, the way my dad introduced me to strangers as the responsible one instead of my name. Responsibility had been my prison. Around 2 a.m. my sister knocked on my door. Not hard. Careful. Controlled. I can change, she said through the wood. I'll get a job. I'll help. Just don't do this. I sat on the bed staring at the door handle. You had years, I replied. You chose laughter instead. She went quiet. In that silence, something final settled inside me. This wasn't revenge. It was release. And somewhere between the ticking clock and the walls I'd paid for, I realized they weren't afraid of being homeless. They were afraid of being powerless. And that fear was only just beginning. By morning the house felt different. Quieter. Tighter. Like something had already ended even though no one said it out loud. My dad avoided me completely. He moved through the kitchen like a guest, grabbing his coffee and leaving without a word. My sister, on the other hand, tried a new strategy, kindness layered so thick it almost cracked. She made breakfast. She cleaned. She asked if I'd slept okay. Each gesture landed late. Around noon I heard her on the phone in the backyard. She didn't know the window was open. She's gone crazy, she hissed. She thinks she owns everything. Dad, say something. I stepped outside before she could finish. She jumped. I do own everything, I said calmly. And talking about me like I'm not here won't change that. Her face twisted, not with sadness but rage. Real rage. The kind that slips out when entitlement finally loses its grip. You owe us, she snapped. You wouldn't be anything without this family. I felt it then, the last thread snap. I became something despite this family, I said. And I paid for the privilege. She laughed, sharp and ugly. You think money makes you powerful? No, I replied. Clarity does. That afternoon I called my lawyer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace. I just confirmed timelines, documents, next steps. That's when my dad finally broke. He stood in the doorway, hands shaking. "You're humiliating us." I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who'd confused authority with dependence. "You humiliated yourself," I said. I just stopped hiding it. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the living room. Family photos stared back at me, frozen smiles borrowed joy. For years I thought silence kept the peace. Now I understood something sharper. Silence only protects the people who benefit from it. And I was done protecting anyone but myself. That evening the tension finally snapped. My sister cornered me in the living room, her voice low but shaking. "You planned this," she said. "You waited for the perfect moment to ruin us." I didn't move. "No. You gave me the moment." My dad hovered behind her, silent, watching like he always had, letting her say the cruel things so his hands stayed clean. "You enjoyed this," she went on. "Didn't you? Watching us panic." I thought about the nights I cried alone in my car. The calls I answered at 3 a.m. The transfers I made without being asked. "No," I said. "I endured it. There's a difference." She scoffed. "So what now? You throw us out and feel powerful?" I finally raised my eyes to hers. Power isn't making people afraid. It's not needing their approval anymore. That's when my dad spoke, his voice cracked and bitter. "You think the world will side with you? You'll be the daughter who abandoned her family." The words hit, but they didn't stick. "I was abandoned first," I replied. Just quietly. Something in him shifted then. His shoulders slumped, and for a split second I saw regret. Real regret. Not enough to change, just enough to hurt. Later that night the shouting started behind closed doors. Blame bounced off the walls. Money, favoritism, years of unspoken resentment finally spilling out now that I wasn't absorbing it. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Not intervening. Not fixing. Around midnight my sister stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. My dad followed minutes later, leaving the lights on. I walked through the quiet house alone. For the first time the silence felt clean. But I knew, endings like this don't fade quietly. They wait. And they come back louder. The door stayed unlocked that night. Not because I forgot. Because I wanted the house to feel the truth before I sealed it. Morning light crept through the windows, touching the walls like a witness. I stood in the hallway barefoot, listening to a space that no longer held borrowed anger or unpaid guilt. Felt honest. By noon my phone started vibrating. Messages. Missed calls. One after another. Family, friends. Distant relatives. People who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly remembered my name. "How could you do this to your father? Your sister is devastated. Money shouldn't break blood." I didn't reply. Instead I forwarded one email, the deed, the payment history, the years of bank transfers, to a single group thread. No commentary. No defense. Just facts. The messages stopped. That afternoon my sister came back. She stood on the porch, eyes red, pride shredded thin. No performance this time. No tears. Just exhaustion. "I don't hate you," she said quietly. "I just don't know how to exist without you fixing things." The honesty surprised me. "I know," I replied. "That's why this has to happen." She nodded once, then turned and walked away without another word. I locked the door behind her. The click echoed through the house. Not as punishment but as punctuation. That evening I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by furniture I'd bought and walls I'd carried. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply refusing to disappear anymore. And the house, finally empty of entitlement, felt like it was breathing with me. The house didn't echo anymore. It settled. Days passed without slammed doors or whispered accusations seeping through the walls. I changed the locks not out of fear but out of finality. The locksmith didn't ask questions. He just did his job the way I had done mine for years without thanks. I packed their remaining things carefully. Not angrily. Not carelessly. I labeled boxes, taped them shut and left them in the garage for pickup. Respect where it was no longer required, but still chosen. My dad came once. He stood at the end of the driveway, smaller than I remembered. He didn't apologize. He didn't accuse me either. "You always were strong," he said quietly. I nodded. I just stopped hiding it. He left without asking for anything. That was the moment I knew it was over. Weeks later, the house began to feel like mine in ways money could never buy. I painted over the scuffed walls. I took down the photos that felt like lies and replaced them with nothing at all. Empty frames. Space. Breathing room. One night, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, lights off, listening to rain hit the windows. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed love meant endurance, who thought being needed was the same as being valued. I whispered an apology to her. Not for what happened, but for how long it took me to leave. I didn't win by throwing anyone out. I won by choosing myself without asking permission. And the house, the one they said I didn't belong in, finally felt like home.